All right, so this, you know, I'm a big head scientist. You know what I mean? So I studies, and we're going through this gang stalking shit, this community torture shit, this whole like everybody on your nut shit, everybody after you, like the Michael Jackson. There he is, you know what I mean? That thing. And it is the governor, but it's like I think I was watching like one of Panic's videos, Brother Panic, and he started talking about the quantum the slit experiment, and then it kind of like I was just getting into the video. I was like, all right, this is gonna be one of those things that bridges the gap, and then it's like, you know what I mean? It hit me with the connectors. Like, why does this happen? Why do people do the gang stalking thing? Why is it so advertised? It's because perception is very important. Perception is, you know, they say you got to focus on yourself and you got to be sometimes, that's why everybody's off to themselves now, because it's like there's a heavy influence on groups of people in external environments and billboards and frequency programming and food and horn honking and motherfucking sirens to just keep you in a heightened state of like peril and chaos. So they basically pay people to the way to, it's like you're running for president, you're on a campaign, and then it's like, all right, how do I control the perception of people? I need the most people to vote for me. So it's like, think of the me as the idea, as the framework for society and reality. um they need the most people to feel about you the way to overpower your sense of yourself. So it's like if you coming up in your neighborhood, or if you're one of those people that's just like, you know, you got the sauce, or you could potentially be somebody that's a notable person. Um, it's like they need to overpower that sense of self. So if somebody's willing to invest thousands of dollars to pay 700 people over the course of, you know, 3 months to just say fuck him, you know what I mean? So they need to come up with a way to justify those people saying fuck him or her. And everybody knows the psychology of humans at this point. This is, you know, we've been raised in schools that were military programs from birth. So it's like you don't have individual thoughts for the most part unless you individuated and separated, in which case they put you on the program because it's like, how dare you go over there when we trying to put you right here. So the people who deviate are the ones that then get their names written down, because in every experiment there's going to be a certain amount of anomalies that's just like they're not, you know, they're not going to keep following the lemming path of going off the cliff. And then so they've been studying you from when you put the blocks together, like did you do orange, red, black, green, purple, or did you do red, yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, red, you know what I mean? Like they're studying that. So it's like, oh damn, you know, your kindergarten teacher's taking notes on you, like this motherfucker has the energy, you know what I mean? He got twin girlfriends. He got, you know, he's in the playhouse with Shorty, like rubbing on cheeks. Like these are things that they're like, his nap time is like he's peaceful when he sleeps, or he doesn't sleep in nap time. Like they take notes and they have an understanding of what all this means. So they're notching you, they're watching you. And I wouldn't be surprised if they experimented with chemicals and like starting fights in schools and having nemesis and rivals and seeing how you handle an op coming at you in 5th grade. You know what I mean? So it's like the people who are just blindly going with the public perception of what's acceptable, they will kind of like, all right, they're going in line, we're cool. But the ones who step out of line and is like, he didn't react or she didn't react the way that we want them to react, or we expected them to react, is like, oh, there's something notable about this person. And then they start honing you into these other funnels of like how to monitor your energy to the gate program, like everybody's talking about, so they can study you a little bit closer. Band, you one-on-one with the teacher, they're really learning how you are developing in your home, because they're looking at you face to face. It's not just a conglomerate of people where you can kind of become anonymous. So they're watching and it's building a dossier of who's who. And in every community, there's probably like 5 outliers who are outside of the liar group, the group of liars. They're outside of that, and they're living on the truth, the stream of truth. So you either got your ass whooped, to where you disassociated from the lie, like myself, like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things you got programmed or deprogrammed based on your trauma. Um, but you're born into this based on your star seed celestial alignment. Let me get back to it. But the gang stalking thing is like, how do we control everything without having to follow everybody? It's like, we can conglomerate a whole bunch of people under one idea and we tell them all what we know will make them say fuck you, because 9 times out of 10 people are jealous, people are easily galvanized for a witch hunt because they're all feeling, sad about life or inadequate or whatever, because they never push themselves. It is what it is, it just happens. But you got a whole bunch of people that's willing to contribute to a cause because they want to feel something, so then you just tell them all, this motherfucker's a pedophile. This motherfucker right here, he be raping women, you know what I mean? He's murdered several grandmas, and just tell them anything that's gonna hit them in that Disney heart trigger, because they all programmed you already to respond to certain things and be like, clutch your pearls at, like how they're using the YN to basically homogenize every melanated person into so it makes it easier to just act on like executing those people, it eliminates the synapses in the brain from having to make nuanced decisions, which also keeps people immature because they don't have to then, they always go worst case scenario, and just then it puts everybody in the fear of like, I can't behave outside of this parameter in order to protect myself. So then it has a dual effect. But if you can, over the course of time, if you just pay a whole bunch of people to say fuck this person and tell them something that makes them believe that that person is worthy of like being treated like shit, then it's harder for that person to even like hear themselves think, because they're constantly being bombarded with a whole bunch of foolishness and nonsense. Like they're always pulling up on them and looking at them like, yeah, you know what you did. And then that thing that's just like, all right, now I'm enemies with this person. They don't even know me, but they were told something and paid. So then it gives them the dopamine hit of like, yeah, justice. You know what I mean? And then that makes it to where society becomes less nuanced and less, it's just those and those, they and them. And I think that's really what it is. I'm trying to figure out how to like condense this, but I just think it's a way to overpower the divine channel for those that can access it, and makes everybody else who's like in the earth box or in the material box, their voice becomes that much more of a behemoth, because they're all under one umbrella of, you're an untouchable, you're this, you're that, and they're directing all of their psychic energy. Like, you're on the free throw line. Like, I think I talked about this, but how you feel when you let the free throw go determines if it goes in. So if there's a whole bunch of people, if you're in an away game, everywhere you go and they're all waving the color joints at you, you gotta be disciplined monk mode to make the shot. But now motherfuckers is causing earthquakes, motherfuckers is putting holes in your shoes, motherfuckers is like poisoning the pizza like the flu game. It's so much more subverted in how they go about disrupting your chi energy to make sure that you can't sink the free throw. And their only reason for doing it is to be a part of something, because everybody's being isolated, and it's like having a community is so coveted as a human, as an animal. So they get community in hatred, and then we have to be isolated like satellites that kind of move around. And they still want to study us, but then they don't want to give us the full power or access to the Mount Sinai to just send the beam out. So if I do music, it's like they're gonna muddy the music. I put it online, they're gonna fragment it up, or like, make it sound like less than, and then they'll have a whole bunch of people that's just all of a sudden now paid to be like, that's your trash. And then or you know what I mean, like they won't say it, but then they'll take the song and then repurpose the song and be like, nigga, you know what I mean? And then they're rewarded with success, because what they represent is still the controlled materialism thing. And what I represent is like, we could be all in the field, grooving and having a good time, and everybody could find their real partners, because it's not about what they're saying it's about. Because I'm a tribesman, I'm a native. But yeah, it's quantum mechanics. If you study the quantum Entanglement, and the way it works is like they are basically using that to eliminate sovereignty and govern everybody's minds by paying people to have the perception that they want. And eventually, if they do that over the course of time, the parents raise the kids to be like, well, this is where the money's at, so you should believe this. These people are this way, and these people are this way, and we get this because we behave this way. So then you get, the blue bloods or whoever it is, which is, think about that term blue bloods, but as unity. But in this sense, it's like they're using their disposition against the unity of the entire community. And it's like you got to be wicked over here and kind of like cutting with your belief system in order to keep people like myself out of the Catalina wine mixer, because my song might make people feel a little bit better. Yeah, but I'm not trying to make it about me. I just think it's one of those things that is just like an epiphany that hit me. It's all quantum mechanics, and they're using. I'm probably expand on it later because it's just when it's an epiphany, it's still a little rough. But yeah, it's one of them things that just started way back then, and has just been repeated and honed in how they execute it. And yeah, I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna come back to it. Okay. All right. So I just had a second part to it. So it's like when they do that, it basically controls your potential outcomes because there's gatekeepers everywhere, and it's like I had an OG tell me, you need everybody to love you, and it's like one of those things that it's true, but they make it hard because they've been controlling narratives with media and all that from before a lot of us were even born. So that's why you got a lot of elderly people whose perceptions are still kind of like governing everybody because they're in high positions of economic dominion, so everything under them has to kind of fit that. So if you even from like Switzerland down to Walmart, you know what I mean, and so there's only a certain amount of outcomes that I could have based on what they believe about who I am, even though that's why they wiped out the books. That's why they destroyed, decimated, genocided, and then built on top of that Christian or whatever religious, which is gridded perspectives in itself. You know what I mean? You only have so many options in that realm, but that's the dogma that's pretty much recalibrated, terraformed everything. So I can only have so many outcomes. They don't see like an anomaly, you know what I mean? Like somebody who's just doing it a little bit differently is always going to be put in the other outcast. We're going to wait on that perspective. So then that's why everybody ends up and then in their pictures, like all that shit is just like it eliminates. There's no other option. Basically, if you want to go viral, nigga, you better, you know what I mean, or like you better be a reactor to something instead of like a leader or something, because the leaders is gonna get gunned down in public. They have these moments where they continue to hammer in these perspectives of like what's possible and what's allowed, and we all see it because it's a reverberation, and with the internet is that much more instant. So they're only giving me so many options of how to achieve anything. And it's like when you reinvent the wheel, then there's probably like a nice window where, niggas was doing the cell phone thing, like flipping the phones. You know what I mean? It's like you could eat off of that for a minute and then they catch on to it and they switch it. You know what I mean? Like all these different ways that people are surviving out here with in the economic system that is already kind of like against and connected to the death and destruction of a certain native spirit. It's like you gotta homogenize yourself and get down or lay down, pretty much is what everybody's being told, and we, find ways to justify it, but it doesn't necessarily agree with your heart. So that's why everybody's just kind of like zonked out and, dehumanized and all that. But you go with the rewards you can get because it's like shit. They're gonna treat me like shit at work. At least I could go, motherfuckers paying for OnlyFans and all this prostitution, and when the robots come out, they're gonna be going crazy with that. You know what I mean? Motherfuckers is. I admit that for me, smoking a little weed is like refuge. Even though it's a tribal thing, they criminalized it, but it's like I'm still gonna go against the grain in order to give myself that self love. So people find these different ways, like overeating, uh, shopping holics. You know what I mean? Like just being a shitty person to people. It feels good to just shit on somebody. Some people love that. But it's just, and there's niches that develop in all of those indulgences that people then try to turn around and capitalize on those. But it's just always like a thing. So the perception, people are always battling perception. So then it's like most people will just go with what's publicly held as the perception in order to get to the economic safety. And they always, they have certain groups that are so homogenized that it's like there's no issue. They always get to the money. And then there's certain groups like that are just leaders in ways of like always pushing the envelope forward or like leaving what's publicly, widespread, because it's like eventually it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. Everybody's doing the same thing. This shit feels weird. I don't believe this. I'm gonna go over there. So then they program these people to go get them and shame them back into conformity, or because if they see them glowing over there and like ascending, then it's like one by one these people are gonna be like, wait a minute, I'm tired of getting this whip cracked on me for whatever. Next thing you know, you got motherfuckers in Tokyo with dreads, you know what I mean? And just being like, with the grills, like doing drill music, trap music. So it's like it picks up, but then they always try to reflip it and replant the seed of the diminishment of it, or the capitalizing on it to then rehomogenize it, because it's like, okay, well now that's the way to make money. Now everybody's like, all the hunters, we're now gonna make a culture out of that, a subculture out of that. And then it puts everybody back in a box mentally, to where now you only have, you gotta be a Chicago drill type nigga, you gotta be a NY drill type nigga, but it's just one of those things that I feel like, and if you're not, then that means you don't get no play. So don't think for yourself, pretty much. Like, we're already giving you a list of options, and if you don't fit one of those, fuck out of here, pretty much. So it's like a job, trying to apply for a job, trying to have a career, trying to make entrepreneurial strides, trying to be a farmer, trying to travel. They're just jumping ahead in all the ways that they see people moving and being like, well, no, you can't do it this way. You have to do it this way. And they just empower so many people to say that that's the truth, that it becomes the truth. Like, with women, it's like, oh, nigga, you can't fuck with no nigga that ain't blase, blase, blah. And then all the women get terraformed into that type of woman. So now you got you got full generation of women that are that. And it's like before it was nuanced, different types, characters. They had their own desires. They had their own poetic ways of speaking, and now it's just like, you know what I mean? I've noticed that over the past 20 years. And with men is just like, saying, yeah, bro, you know what I mean? Bro, yeah, bro, I swear. You know what I mean? It's like they don't think beyond just this realm of communication, because it's like, I don't want to stand out too much, because then I'm gonna be the one that everybody's like attacking. Like, why are you like that? You're supposed to be like this. This is all we recognize. And I've experienced that growing up. So families, but yeah, it takes a great heart and like strong mind to continue to endeavor in an unknown direction with a intuition, versus just settling for what's, you go to McDonald's, you're gonna get a Big Mac, you're gonna get a motherfucking some fries, and it's gonna be like, they're at McDonald's, even though it's happening now to where people's like, yeah, but you know what you're gonna get there, and it's not like there's a bunch of people that's gonna be at McDonald's that's like, hey, you're at McDonald's, welcome in, and you're gonna get that feeling. But your body might be like, damn, nigga, what the fuck? And you just gotta deal with that in a wave. But it takes somebody, bold to then go into the rainforest and risk their sanity of, you know, being outcast and people throwing toys at them and trying to, like, you know, arrest them and all this stuff just to maybe find that soil that's over there, that, or that tree that has that like uncharted dragon fruit or something like that, to then be like, oh, this is the thing that purifies your whole organism. And these are people who we don't reward, but we also do monitor. And when they develop these things, um, somebody might sneak around and like try to swoop that and then recalibrate it and put some cut on it and then sell it. And you know, I think that happens a lot, just because the people who kind of founded this circumstance that we're in, this grid, energetically, are envious motherfuckers, and they don't like when people do dope shit that they can't say they had a hand in. So I think that's what's going on. And when you're alt, or when you're like bold or righteous or radical or whatever, it's like you're gonna have a whole bunch of people that's just programmed to say fuck you, because it's a perception, one perception. That's why you got to tap in with the Most High, because it's like you need the omnipresent channel to deal with this whole realm of a whole bunch of people that seemingly have all of the doors, the exits and entrances blocked, and they're trolling every bridge. Somehow you got to be able to levitate over the bridge, because it's like they put hella bullshit on the bridge that's going bear traps and all this stuff. So that's why it's always miracles when people make it out of these circumstances. But that is my perspective on this shit, you dig?